right. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon for all of you that joined us today. Thank you everyone for joining today. This is our first session for 2025 and obviously first session because we changed our names because we used to be called Fabricating Values, but my finance background caught up and as rightfully people told me fabricating might not be the best way to say value. Hence, we are now crafting values. And today, we are going to talk about why Excel loves Power BI. Go ahead and get started with a little bit of introduction. Paul.
Ooh, thank you, Khaled. I'm really excited to be here because I love Excel and I love Power BI. My name is Paul Barnhurst. I'm known as the FP&A guy, and just excited to be here today.
Cool. Sulaiman?
Hello everyone, I'm a statistics graduate, previously worked as a data scientist in a healthcare analytical company. At the moment working with a data crafter as an associate data analyst, and I love Power BI. Let's see how this goes.
All right. Nazmo?
I have been a financial accountant and management accountant. Right now working on financial transformation, solved some cool business problems with only Excel and now solving with Excel and Power BI, just harnessing the full power of data. Excited to be here.
Nazmul, you got a lot of people saying they can tell you're a fan of soccer or football as the rest of the world calls it. You're already scoring points.
I am.
All right. I'm trying to figure out how to do this right.
Give us just 1 second. New year, new platform, all those fun things. So bear with us. Should I tell a joke real quick? Maybe I will.
Yeah, I'm always down for your jokes.
What? Why was the spreadsheet constipated?
Tell me.
Because it couldn't budget.
Can you guys see my screen?
So if there's any technical problems, I'll tell jokes.
Sounds good. Is my screen visible now?
Yeah.
It is, yes.
Awesome. You don't really feel as much, Paul, but for most of us that are doing the BI dashboard work, if you haven't figured out, I mean, you know this, right? The biggest, like the number one software dev button is export to Excel, right?
Yep. I can relate to this. I built some BI reports and immediately, hey, how can I get that data in Excel?
Pretty much, right? Essentially, today we're going to kind of do a little bit of overview. Then we're going to kind of show how to export data into Excel from Power BI. But we want to go beyond that because there is, if you're just doing export to Excel from Power BI, you are missing out big time because Power BI does a lot better than export to Excel. And that's a big promise to deliver. So we'll try, right? Question for you, Paul, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who is the king of analytics?
Well, I would argue the spreadsheet, but when you get Excel and Power BI together, you got a great marriage.
Yeah, but I mean, like, even though I have come from the world of Excel, right? I used to be Excel jock a couple of years back. Now running a data analytics company and whatnot, I still consider Excel to be the king of analytics, and there's a lot of hate around it. Unfortunately, that's where the world is today. I want to say unfortunately, but I think that's where it is. I think there's not a single tool out there that's as versatile as it is.
That's just it. The spreadsheet format, and Excel is the king of spreadsheets, is as flexible as they come to be able to do whatever you need. So it's going to be the place you often start. Shouldn't always necessarily be the place you finish, but somewhere along the way, you're going to use it. I mean, it's the king. Power BI is wonderful. When you marry them together, it gets even better.
Yeah, the only problem is Excel is also a Swiss Army knife. Trying to cut down a tree with a Swiss Army knife is not the best idea.
Oh, come on. It just takes a little extra time.
Yeah, I know. A little bit time, right? Now, if you notice, this one kind of missed the thing. It's missing the green mark on the right place. However, right now, the king of analytics on that side from a BI platform perspective, Microsoft has kind of left everybody behind, right? And this essentially makes Power BI the king of analytics. And I would like to argue that part of the reason that's the case is because of Excel. So I'll come back to some stories at the end, but let's kind of start simple with how do you export data from Power BI to Excel? Does it sound good?
I think I can find the export button, but I want to see what you have for me.
All right, it's quite simple. Looks like I gotta hit play. Just go to any report, any visual that you want the data. There you go. It has a button called export. And there's your file. Nothing fancy, right? I would like to argue that why are you exporting the data to Excel? 9 out of 10 times you're trying to build a pivot table, right?
You're doing some kind of analysis, and yep, that often is a pivot table.
So from that perspective, my philosophy is not to export, right? So there's something better in Excel that's much better than export. So we're going to show today a couple of things, like we're going to show live connections, analyzing Excel, data flows, Power BI feature tables, and XML endpoint. Of all these features, the last one is only premium. The first four are standard Power BI features. Are you familiar with live connection, Paul?
Yes, I have used Live Connection. Love it.
All right. What's happening here, Nazmo?
So we can go to the report. We can click export, and if we do like the data, if we get the data in Excel, there's a live connection with it, and we can also do analyze in Excel option.
All right. If you notice, once we get the data out in this scenario, this is a table, right? And the key about this table is retaining connection to Power BI, which means the next time you'll never have to hit the export button.
Correct.
So if you're building reports outside of Power BI in Excel, this is one way that I would like to argue this is better than export, because guess what? You do it once, it's always there.
So you can just refresh it every time, right? That's the whole
Correct.
idea, is just take the table and have a live connection.
Absolutely.
I could live with that.
Well, now going back to the concept of pivot tables, right? My favorite feature, obviously, in Excel is pivot table, right? Can you imagine Excel without pivot tables?
Not really. I tried.
A lot of sum ifs, VLOOKUPs.
I can use the new pivot by formula. I guess power pivots if they're not pivot tables. But again, those are all basically pivot tables. So I kind of supported my own argument. Never mind.
So from that perspective, a lot of times as we are analyzing, right, what we are trying to do is trying to get to a pivot table, right? So from that perspective, it wouldn't be nice if we just got the pivot table to start with.
I think the correct answer is yes.
So here, for those of you who didn't know this is possible, here, Salaman, what are you doing?
So I think this is by far the best way to add a pivot table, because it is, I think, just a few clicks, we can get the pivot table directly from the insert tab. And another thing that is, it's completely live, connected with the Power BI dataset semantic model.
So as you can see that we created a pivot table. I would like to argue this is the fastest pivot table you'll ever build. And it acts and behaves like any other pivot table. And guess what? Click on pivot table and insert, and it gives you a straight connection to Power BI, which allows you to get the data. And one of the best part about this in Power BI is if you're using row level security, meaning people have access to different things. When you send this Excel file to them, when they update, it will only show them the data they have access to.
Yeah. Another thing I love about this is, right, you're bringing in data from multiple different sources into a pivot table. You can see all those tables there. Anyone who's built a regular pivot table, right, you don't have that without the data model, which is Power BI at the end of the day.
Yep. Yeah. I think you kind of pointed it out earlier, Paul, when you were talking about Power Pivot. So this essentially is a design of a Power Pivot, meaning it doesn't have one table versus it has multiple tables, meaning we don't have to keep doing lookups. The story is that kind of is very relevant for me, right? This is my beginning of my Power BI journey in 2016. I think it's in 16. And I was trying to work with these guys, and they were heavily into Excel. Right. And then this is one of the key part of transformation is instead of trying to push people onto new platforms, sometimes meeting them where they are today makes a big difference. Right. Meaning they wanted the data. right? And then first I was like, okay, you want this summary table? I gave them a analyze in Excel. They didn't even see pivot table. All I told them was, if you want to update it, just right click refresh, and here's your slicer to change it to next month. And they loved it. It saved them about 2 weeks every month. And then I'm like, what do you guys do with this pivot table? They're like, we make this pie chart. Not that I'm a big fan of pie chart, but I'm like, you know what? I can kind of give you that pie chart automatically. You don't even have to go through it.
You know what pie's good for? It's two things. You know what those two things are?
What?
Playing Pac-Man.
I could get behind that.
Otherwise, don't do pie charts. Anyway, continue. Sorry.
I could get behind that. I can get behind that. But again, from transformation perspective with businesses, meeting them where they are makes a big difference. Because at any point of time, there is obviously the human change aspect to it, but the other aspect of it that people forget a lot of time is that change requires elimination of what they do first. You try to give them something fancy and that doesn't do their minimum requirement, guess what they're going to do? Hit export to Excel. Versus if you can get them comfortable with what they were doing, get them there faster and easier, and then take it from there. All right, let's move on to the next one. Well, before I do, there are a few different ways you can analyze in Excel. In this one, this is the other option that you can go from the data tab. Hold on, am I in the same tab or not? Hold on. So let's see. So you can essentially, the analyze in Excel is so popular, there's about 10 ways to get there. As you notice, now we went from the data tab instead of the pivot table tab.
Instead of insert a pivot table, you're going through Power Query, basically the data tab.
Then we have, oops, I keep playing the same thing. This is the directly from Power BI report. So if you're already analyzing something in Power BI, you actually have an option to click on export to Excel and then open in Excel, voila, right? Then we have also the option from semantic models. This is essentially if you're in Power BI and you know which model you want, and then it will give you exactly the same thing. Thoughts?
And comments on me, I think it's right. It's the ideal to bring in your data correctly, especially if you're trying to get as close as you can to one source of truth. Sometimes I wonder if we ever truly have one source of truth, right? But that whole idea of having your data in your data lake, your database, warehouse, wherever, your reports all in one platform, but being able to analyze them in Excel without disconnecting them, without always having to export that data and wondering, did something change? Now bringing it into the pivot table. To me, as I see all these different solutions, that's really the benefit, right? It's the whole idea of Microsoft taking the Power Platform, and in this case, Power Query, Power BI, Excel, and allowing you to do different things in the tool that's best for what you're doing. Because detailed analysis, looking at it in a pivot table format, that's not best done in Power BI. Looking at the graphics is great. If you want to build a pie chart, they're probably better in Power BI than Excel. I
mean, because the reason is the pie will actually respond when you try to click on it, and then all the other. One of the biggest feature of Power BI is Power Query, which also comes from Excel. And Paul and I both teach a Power Query class sometimes when we get time. From that perspective, other key feature of Power BI is a data flow, which is essentially a Power Query on the web. This approach is slightly different than before, where instead of kind of taking a more data from a model, we can serve the data as a data flow object in Power BI, right?
Before you jump to that, there's a couple comments that came in.
Sure, go ahead.
Someone asked about the semantic model, saying that's not a term a typical Excel user is familiar with. So do you want to just maybe do 30 seconds and explain what you mean when you said, hey, you can pull it from the semantic model, just so make sure everybody understands?
Absolutely. Power BI likes to keep people confused, right? It's actually not Power BI. This is Microsoft's specialty, right? They keep changing names.
Yes. That's the next comment that came up.
Power BI semantic model essentially used to be just called data models. Essentially, whenever we create a Power BI model, meaning we pull the data in from that, we have the relationship and whatnot. Semantic model just means this is if you're familiar with the concept of cubes and whatnot. This is essentially the business logic implemented on the data, whether you have calculations, relationships, like for example, calculations like your year-to-date sales and whatnot, and you have the invoice data, and you have a dimension data for master data, product data, and all the stuff that we build together. At the end of the day, whenever you're looking at a Power BI report, 99% of the time it's backed by a data model. It's actually 100% of the time backed by a data model. The reason I said 99% is because you can also put the Power BI report on top of a SSAS, which is not a Power BI model, but it's exactly the same thing on SQL Server Analysis Services Tabular, but that's also a model sitting somewhere else.
The shortest way to think of this is the semantic model, the data model, all the same thing. It's where the data sits, where you have your star schema or whatever, your relationships and all your data to feed your reports. Is that?
Absolutely. One of the key points I think this brings up, Paul, is you asked, we're talking about one version of the truth, right? One version might be always a little bit too restrictive, but it's one source of the truth is usually a better way to go about it, right?
Sure.
Power BI data model is one of the things that I say, like, if you're going to really drive adoption on Power BI, you need to move from the idea of reporting to data modeling, right? And the reason I say that is because in the old days, you might have, how many versions of sales report do you have in any company? 50, 100, couple hundred, right? I've seen the entire breadth of it, right? In done right, a single Power BI data model for sales analytics probably can do 99% of your all reports, meaning a single semantic model, aka data model, properly can do 99% of all of your reports. And part of it is we're showing it right now, right? If you have a bunch of stuff on Excel, it will do it, right? Because you might need that in Excel.
So before we jump in, that leads to kind of a question, I think. As we talk about data models, it feels like, for people that are on the Excel end, they either need the technical person to help understand the data or understand a little bit of data structure to build these. Is that a fair statement? The better you get to know a little bit of data, the more you find yourself understanding the benefits of Power BI. You start to head into how data is structured and how data works, some of those type of things.
I agree. The thing is, the way I would kind of talk about it is essentially started where you are today, right? Yep. But the investment that you make to learn Power Query models and whatnot, it will create dividends. This is Simon Sinek sentence I'm about to butcher, but my thing is always start, because us with analytics background and whatnot, we might sometimes suffer from analysis paralysis, right? Right. So I would say go ahead and get started, get something taken care of today, but build a plan. And guess what? You have GPT to build your plan on what the steps should be, right? You don't have to even go do other ways. There are very good guidance on the market, but you can go ahead and get started today and then find who's great at it and follow the path.
I just hire you.
I can provide some guidance, but I mean, I kind of mostly do consulting now, right?
I'm kidding.
But kind of. Again, this is a very good place for the MVPs and whatnots, for those of you who are not familiar, right? We call the Italians the SQL BI guys. If you want to really learn Power BI DAX, data model, if you want to learn Power Query, people from our similar finance background, Ken Pauls and Miguel Myers, and there's a entire slew of things around there. Visualization is not my cup of tea, right? It takes me a lot of time to make something look pretty. But there are also people like Elena and whatnot that does amazing works. The Power BI community is amazing. Like, for example, Paul's a Excel MVP. There are Power BI MVPs, if you get me started, like Reza Rad, Nicola, Shabnam Watson, there's amazing people in the community that gives you focus on guidance on learning.
There's a ton of great people, great resources, free, paid, books, everything. If it's something you want to learn and you can't find resources, DM me. I'll give you some. Not a problem.
There you go. All right. Now coming back to why we were here, why we think Excel loves Power BI, right? 2 on the list is essentially what we call data flow, right? And for data flows, hold on, technical difficulties again. There you go.
Do you need me to tell another joke? All right.
You know what? I'll take the joke anyways.
What does a statistician look for in a spouse?
Normal distribution?
Dang it, you got it. Nobody gets that one. A normal.
It shouldn't have been me. It should have been Suleiman answering that question because he actually has statistics background.
You defeated me in the race.
He doesn't have a wife though.
All right.
Yeah. I'm negatively skewed at the moment.
I'm not touching that one. Moving on.
I am not touching that one either. This one, what are you doing?
So for the data flows, suppose you have that you must have to have the data flows in your Power BI workspace. And if you have that, then you can read the data flows instantly from your Excel desktop. As you can see, we can go to data, after that Power Platform to data flow, and then we can just get the data instantly using the data flow item that is sitting in our Power BI workspace.
And for those of you who are not familiar, this is the Power Query experience. In this case, Suleiman was bringing the data in purely from without any transformation. But if you want to do transformation and whatnot, this is a great way to do it. And data flows, I think, before Fabric in Power BI, data flows were pretty much a really great way to share data. And it is still today. It's just that it doesn't scale very well. But if you're coming from Excel as a database, it scales much better than that. Not going to say anything about that, Paul?
I love my database, Excel. Excel is not an enterprise-grade database. Please don't try to make it one.
Have you used the Power BI feature
If you want
tables?
to have your CD records, go for it. Listed as a database in Excel.
Have you tried using the Power BI feature tables before, Paul?
I have not, but I saw this video earlier, so I know what you're going to do here, and I've seen similar things.
This is a feature that was rolled out a couple years back. We haven't really seen a lot coming in development from that
I
perspective.
saw the feature when it rolled out, but I haven't used it.
It has some unique use cases, right? So for example, think about if you have organizational master data, right? Customers, products, and whatnot, and everybody's trying to do lookups and whatnot. This one does a little bit step better than that. Here, someone is setting this up as a feature table. And if you notice,
I can help.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So at first, from the Power BI desktop, we will have to mark a table as a feature table. And for that, we will have to give it a description or some kind of name. We will have to put the primary key and also a key column by which we will actually do the lookup thing. So if you can see, I used the product name as my raw label, by which I will look up in my tables. After doing that, after publishing the report into workspace, that table, the product table, becomes a organizational data, or you can say like a master data. And using that master data, we can actually look up like what is that specific product's price, or what is its cost, its sizes, and what category and subcategories it belongs to, and many other things. I like to say it's kind of a lookup monastery. So yeah.
These things are usually very useful, as Suleiman was mentioning, if we're doing things that are similar to master data. So if you're doing currency exchange rates or things like that, company location descriptions, mapping, and things like that, this is a pretty cool way to get there.
And if I can add one thing, I think this whole Excel loves Power BI. What this is an extension of the data types that were built into Excel. You have stock data types, you have, I think, locations like countries and currency or something. There's a couple different ones where they're basically cards, and you can bring in the different elements via lookup. Well, you can create your own in your Power BI model, those certain items that you want to be able to look up off. So they're much easier. It's kind of that same idea. You could also do it in Power Query, just in Excel, and they're kind of a data card. And so those data types are really what allowed Excel. Python works off data types in a lot of ways. And so it's allowed a lot of the extension of what we're seeing as we continue to bring these platforms together. So data types are great in Excel. If you have Power BI, and you can leverage them to have your organizational key data types in your reports and be able to look them up on steroids, as you said, right? So that's the term I like to use, a lookup on steroids.
The right kind of steroids?
Yeah, thank you.
Yes. Well, the Arnold type steroids. Is there another type? We all want to look like Arnold?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I'm not touching that one.
No, I do.
Well, you're not
That
married.
might be the negative skew coming there.
All right.
All right, so this last feature that we want to show, this is more technical than the other four. And this is, for you to use this, you would need what? Solomon?
Premium license. Is that? Oh, wait, sorry.
That is correct.
Yes, that is correct.
So as you can notice,
We
if
would
the
need-
workspace, when they're using, there is a diamond sign next to the Contour Sales Analytics on the top, right here. And then also at the same time, the other part is either has to be that diamond or a pure diamond without the people on it. People means it's a premium per user license versus if the pure diamond, it would be a fabric workspace.
Basically, we'll have to take the connection string of the workspace. And using that connection string, we can go to data, after that SQL analysis service import, and then we can read in a specific table or multiple tables that belongs to our semantic model.
And this is a feature that was pretty good before we had the live connection, right? With live connection, I personally prefer just using the live connection where the data comes in. You just build a table in Power BI and then just create a live connection, you're done, right? This one, you're outside of Excel, right? So XML endpoint is not limited to Excel. In any program can call it and do the authentication and do it. But that was just kind of showcasing the full breadth of it. Last question for you, Paul. Maybe not last. Why is this better than just doing this in Excel?
Because Excel is not a database? In all seriousness, because it connects your data. How many have ever been frustrated and just want to throw their hands up and say, I quit because they were copying and pasting stuff and something changed and you copy and pasted the new one, right? Starting to learn Power Query helps you automate that, but having that data where people can report and you're having that one location for storage of your data and using it across your tools just saves time. It makes life easier. So if you're on the Microsoft tech stack, there's no reason not to take advantage of this.
I think Paul kind of already answered that question, but if you think about it, this allows us to do one version of the truth, right? The security is enforced, unlike when we build a pivot table, the entire data is there. If you're using Analyze in Excel, the user, when they get it, their security is enforced, right? If you're shipping things around across company, inside company and whatnot, that gets honored, right? I personally am someone who would spend 20 minutes writing a function to do something that I could have probably done it manually in 5 minutes. So given that I usually don't like doing things manually, and this kind of keep creating the refresh. So essentially this allows you to get freedom from what I call data drudgery, right? All right, let's see.
That looks like data drudgery to me, having to walk through that desert.
That'll be fun, right?
I'll pass.
So I think I want to specifically thank Suleiman and Nazmul for putting the presentation together, doing the recording and all that fun stuff, right? And then obviously Paul for being here and guiding us along the way. That was a fun conversation. Oh boy, we have a lot of comments.
Been commenting throughout the whole thing. We've got some great comments. I think people have answered all of them along the way as people have asked. I don't think there's any open questions.
I see Owen in the chat. I mean, yeah. We got some powerhouse, Owen, Shui.
There's some conversations about the tabular and the SSAS and compression engine. I think those were the biggest things.
But no, as you can tell, this is an amazing community, right? As you kind of start your learning journey. And from that perspective, if you are using Power BI or think of using Power BI, one of the key pillars that you should think about is how do you leverage it correctly with Excel? Because this will help you drive your adoption much, much better.
Agree.
All right. Was I correct to say Excel loves Power BI, Mr. Excel MVP?
You were. I don't know if you saw the comment, but Ken Pulse even commented that he loved that term. And who better person than Ken? You mentioned him earlier. So I think you hit a home run with Excel loves Power BI, and I love the finance community. So what more can we ask for?
All right. Thank you, everyone. This is an awesome way to start the year, I think. Personally, my journey, I'm an accidental data professional, started at Excel to Power BI, now to Fabric. And the key of the success is that you never leave your truth behind. Meaning for those of you that are starting your journey, a lot of people from finance background, different background, you want to enter the data profession. You do not want to leave your edge that you bring. Start learning, start growing, and thanks for being here.
Thank you. And last thing I'll add, College, you're at least a professional, an accidental professional. I'm just an accident. Well done.
One of the things Paul asked me, what do you want me to do? I was like, just bring your humor. As he has done an amazing job.
And I like closing here. I got to read this comment. Beard progression from top left to bottom right. Someone else put that.
You know, it's funny, right? That's essentially, if you can drag Elena in here, that's how people read information. If you look information design, it's a Z pattern. All right, thank you, everyone.
Yeah,
we're going to do a next session in March, which we're going to show what's the best way to share. I think we have kind of done a few things, but this one we're going to do pack from beginning to end, chain together all the way from RLS to Power BI apps. Look forward to that, and thank you for joining today. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.